Hi everybody, it's Oksana, and today I want to talk to you about different shapes of wire. So the first one I'm going to talk about here is round wire. This is a spool of some 20 gauge round wire from riogrande.com, and round wire looks like it's the most common type of wire. I think this is what people think of when they think of wire, and when you cut it, I know it's like pretty impossible to see because it's just a tiny little point, but the little cross section is like a circle, and that's why the wire is called round. Now this wire is typically used in woven designs. So my older videos that involve a lot of wire weaving, I oftentimes use 20 gauge round wire for the base wires, and then either 28 or 26, which is much thinner than this, for the wire that I weave with. But this is round wire. And the next wire shape that I'm gonna talk to you about is going to be square. So this is some square wire. This is 18 gauge, which is a pretty large gauge. I do usually use 20, but I thought it might be easier for you to see kind of the shape of it when it's thick like this. So I'm gonna try my best to show you. So it basically has 4 flat sides, like a square. And if you were to cut it, although this kind of has like a pointy little end, if you were just to make a perfectly straight cut, it'd be like a little tiny square. So hopefully you can see the light reflecting off the different sides there. So there's like little edges as well. Maybe you can see on the spool also. So the thing about square wire that makes it kind of special is that it's nice when you're making a frame, like not a woven design, but the frame design, like the type that I've been making lately for my tutorials, because I find that it holds a stone better and doesn't slip around like the round wire because it has these flat sides. So I find it makes a more stable frame. And another thing about square wire is you can twist it. So if you hold it still, in this case I just have to hold it with some pliers, but usually it would be coming out of your pendant. And then what you can do is you can just twist it. And because it's got the flat sides, they end up forming this kind of twisted pattern. So this only works with square wire, not round wire. And then you have this little twisted pattern that forms. And the last wire I want to talk to you about is half round wire. Now, a long time ago, I got this super thick half round wire. It's 12 gauge. No, I don't actually use this very much because it's a pretty unique wire because it's so thick. But I thought this would be perfect to show you the shape of the half round, because I normally use really thin half round wire, and I will show it to you, but it's almost impossible to understand the shape of it because it just looks like a super thin little wire. But on this thick one, you can kind of understand the shape. So if you imagine a round wire, kind of looks like round from the top here, like a round wire cut in half like this way. So if you take 2 of these and put them side by side, they would kind of make a round wire. So here is the flat side, like imagine a round wire was cut. So like cut, here's the flat side, and then here's the rounded side, and that's how that shape works. So it looks kind of flat from this view, but then it looks thicker from this view. And so the cool thing about half round wire is it works really well for making a connection, especially when you're wrapping it around some square wire. And so the way I like to wrap it is I put the flat side down and I wrap around. And one thing to keep in mind with half round wire, because it's almost like a cross section, like a round wire cut in half this way, it's going to be much more flexible feeling for a gauge that might normally be kind of thick. So, I mean, this one is kind of thick, but let's go to my 22 gauge wire. So with, this is the 22 gauge half round, and it's pretty hard to see, but it also has a flat side and a rounded side here. Now, 22 gauge round wire might be pretty hard to work with. It'll feel thicker and harder to bend because it's essentially twice as thick. I guess that's what I'm trying to get across. So when it comes to half round, you just have to keep in mind it's gonna feel thinner and be more bendable than a comparable gauge in the round wire. Whereas square and round, if you have 20 gauge square and 20 gauge round, they're gonna be similar. It's just this one's gonna have like flat edges, but they're gonna like bend and be similar to bend. It's not like one's gonna feel much floppier than the other. So what I wanna show you is how I wrap half round wire to make a connection. So I'm just gonna keep using my little scrap here. And what I like to do, because it can be tricky for people working with half round wire for the first time, so what I like to do is I like to just take one little end of it and just kind of hold it so that it doesn't move out of place. And then I start guiding the half round wire with my hand. So it's flat side down, the rounded side is up, and I just start guiding it. And notice that instead of using this hand and wrapping it, I'm actually twisting the piece that is wrapping around. And I'm using this hand to guide it so that it lays nice and flat. Each piece lays down next to the other piece. And I think that's really key. And this twisting really helps me. So if you're having trouble doing this with half round wire, making these connections, try twisting this piece instead of the normal, like when you're weaving, you're usually using this hand and moving it around. So try doing it the other way where you're twisting the piece. And then normally after it's wrapped like this, you would just kind of press down on it, and it makes this type of connection. And the two wires are connected together. So that's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to tell you. These are the three shapes that I know and use: round, square, and half round. I'm sure there are others out there, but these three are the most common and the most accessible. And again, as I showed you guys, riogrande.com is where I purchased my wire. I'm not like affiliated with them or anything. I just get a lot of questions where I buy my wire from, and that's the biggest like supplier that I found that has all the sizes and shapes that in all the wire that I use. So I'm sure there's other shops out there as well. But anyways, that's just what I wanted to share with you. So hopefully that was helpful, and if you have any questions, leave them below, and I'll try to make a few more of these more like informative type videos rather than tutorials, because I think they can be helpful as well when you're getting started.